Hey, how do you stop a pandemic before it even starts? On today's Innovator Show, we have two incredible guests who can answer this exact question. The head of JLABS from Johnson & Johnson Innovations and the co-founder of a startup on the cutting edge of genetic engineering and disease treatment. And of course, an amazing giveaway for you or viewer. Welcome to Innovator, powered by Montreal New Tech, a show about the people and organizations who are changing the world through innovative ideas, technology, and science. I'm your host, Valentine, taking a slice of your time on today's Friday between startups, your research, your tech, or whatever we're all doing these days. And we're here today to talk about the future of biotech industry in North America. How are or experts going to respond to viruses that don't exist yet? How will they prevent future outbreaks? We have two organizations who seek to answer this call. First, coming up shortly, we'll have Allan Miranda. He's the head of JLABS of Canada. It's a subset of Johnson & Johnson Innovations, providing a model where scientists can focus on science. And then we have Brent, Stead, the founder of specific Biologics, who is developing next generation gene editing technology. But first, as we promised, a giveaway, and here it is. So, by the way, we're giving away 2 tickets to Effervescence 2021. It's an award-winning conference about the future of life science coming up March 15th, so in just a few days. There are going to be 12 captivating sessions. Sorry, there's going to be 12 captivating sessions, a virtual job fair, B2B networking in attendance of the Minister of Health, Social Services, Economy, Innovation, and several others. I got actually confused by all the lineup for a sec here. Sounds pretty neat, right? So there's like 2 lucky innovators, viewers of the show, who have the chance to win a ticket worth over $300. So now, how do you get on that ship? At some point during the episode, we're going to show a secret word. Make sure to write it down. You'll need it in order to enter or give away. And you know the drill. You know how live shows work. You have to subscribe. If you haven't done it yet, I'm pretty sure, there's a little like or subscribe button floating around here. Watch the show until the end. And by the way, we have some very great guests coming up. There's a fantastic option that we love with live shows is that you can get to ask them questions. I'm sure we're going to hit on a few little areas that you want to know more about, or you have your own tricky questions. Just smash that little comment section, ask your question, and we'll get a chance to ask them live. So look, without further ado, let's get Allan on stage. Hey, let's give a warm welcome to Allan.
Hey, Valentine.
Allan, fantastic.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, so you're the head of JLABS Canada. I was looking. You have a fairly interesting career. In your last role, you were responsible for the market access strategy for a fairly complex set of product portfolio, well exceeding $1 billion. And now you're heading JLABS Canada, which is responsible of launching over 88 companies by now. The first question is, how are you, Allan, and where do you find time to sleep?
I think we're all asking ourselves that question these days. I think, from the biotech perspective, actually, COVID-19 has given us renewed purpose. I think often biotech or biotechnology, pharma, med tech, we're looked upon as being, the slow and, poor cousin to other technology companies. And I think the pandemic, I don't say if it's a good thing that's come of it, but one of the things that has happened is I think people see biotech, med tech as something that we need to invest in that can provide real solutions. So, I think it's a good thing that we're all having some restless nights, because I think it's now that too many people want to talk to us as opposed to before where nobody wanted to talk to us. So I think all good problems to have.
kind of, yeah, a good problem to have in some ways. By the way, we were looking at your profile, and we saw you've completed your education here in Montreal at McGill. So, do you prefer Montreal or Toronto?
You know what? I think it's a different stage of life. I think Montreal offers a number of great things. I'd say the first thing it probably offers is a dynamic group of institutions and the vibrancy of the community. So anybody who's spent any time in Montreal knows that it's a diverse community. It's a place where people have a lot of enjoyment for life, and I think they look at problems differently. And so I think every environment's unique, and I think Montreal has, over the past 10 years, has really demonstrated that when it comes to biotech, health tech, artificial intelligence, as it pertains to the life sciences, it's punching above its weight. And I think that's a testament to the diversity of the population and the intellectual energy that comes from the surrounding institutions.
I like the answer because we like teasing every time people are not, from Montreal or slightly outside. Of course, as I like your framing because it's more about where you are at a specific time of your life and what are the resources and the kind of the energy you can get from the environment you're in. Look, before we get into the meat and bones of the interview, I have something in mind. Let's kick off with one of our favorites segment. It's a fun and warm rapid fire questions.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So the way it works in the rapid fire question round is pretty simple. Your goal is to answer as many questions as you can in 2 minutes. So far, our record holder is Michael Me from Amplitude Ventures with 8 questions answered. And at the end of the year, you may or may not have a trophy for, as a record holder. It's a fairly informal process. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I love winning trophies.
Perfect. So, okay, first question. Go. How often do you sanitize your hands in a day?
Probably about 12.
Damn. Which JLab location is your favorite?
JLABS at Toronto, obviously.
It was an easy one, right? Okay. After how many employees do you stop being a startup? A more tricky one.
30.
Okay, interesting. What do you miss the most during the pandemic?
I would say being able to. My family's Indian, and so there's a lot of hugs that happen, and we haven't hugged anybody in close to, other than my wife, obviously. She's listening. So the hugs.
The hugs, and yeah, everybody stay safe. And what is the most unexpected thing an entrepreneur will find at JLABS?
Unexpected thing, I think, is the closeness of the community. So I think when you're out starting a business on your own, you don't often understand that there's other people and stuff who are going through similar struggles. So I think the unexpected thing is, even though some of the companies are working on different things, you'll find people who have similar issues and challenges. So you find a real community of like-minded people.
Fantastic. And what's the greatest barrier to a biotech startup?
Cash, and I think also talent. As you start to grow your company, finding the right people to kind of help you commercialize. I think that's a challenge in Canadian.
Fantastic. And how many hours do you sleep these days?
You know what? I've got 2 young kids, and I'm a pretty active exercise person, so I'm pretty good at getting 7 hours of sleep, irrespective of what's going on around me. So I'd encourage everybody is get your sleep in, and get your exercise in.
Impressive.
Pretty
okay, let's do a super fast round. This or that. So Apple or Android?
Apple.
Work at home or office?
Work in the office.
Perfect. Thank you. So, you know the drill. It goes pretty fast. So look, well done. Now let's get serious and unpack some of those questions, shall we?
Sure.
So we're really keen to talk about how to defeat future biological threats. But before we do, it will be great to get a bit of background on you and JLABS, of course.
Sure.
So the first thing I'd like to know is, do you consider yourself as an innovator?
Do I consider myself an innovator? I think I support innovators. So I think My role is really to facilitate innovation.
Hmm.
And so I have to have an innovator's mindset. I've worked at startup companies and I've been in that position, but I don't have the same risk. I don't personally take the same risk that all of those of you in the audience are taking in terms of starting a company. So sometimes I feel embarrassed to put myself in the role as an innovator. I think
Modest.
I'm more comfortable to say that I support innovation, and that's probably but that's needed and necessary as well. So I'd say I support innovation, but I would be a too far a jump for me, and I would feel uncomfortable to say I'm an innovator.
Okay, sub question to that is, what's your vision for the future of biotech innovation?
So I think in terms of biotech innovation, I really look at it from the Canadian context. I work for JLABS. JLABS is Johnson and Johnson's incubator. Johnson Johnson's the world's largest healthcare company. But I'm a Canadian working for this multinational corporation, and my focus is really how can I help Canadian companies grow and scale. So when you ask your question and talk about the future of biotech, I really internalize that as how can I help Canadian biotech. And so what I'd like to see is, in the next 3 to 5 years, I'd like to personally be responsible for, 5 to 10 companies being able to make it to some significant stage of maturity, meaning they've been able to raise a Series A financing. So I think, when we talk about the future of biotech, I try to make it very personal and things I can do to kind of help. And if I can get 5 to 10 companies, through to that maturity stage, I feel like I've done my part to help that evolution. And it's going to go where it's going to go. Some of those factors are beyond my control. But certainly, if I can help get 10 companies or 5 to 10 to a Series A round, then I've done my part.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so here at Innovators at Montreal New Tech, we're fairly familiar with the concept, startups, incubators, and probably related to what you just said is what kind of makes JLab stand out from the other incubators? What is your secret spice, let's say,
Yeah, I'd say the
or
secret
your
spice
personal
is
touch?
that J&J connection I talked about. I said, like, my
Yeah.
goal is to get 5 to 10 companies to a Series A. And so what we find in Canada is that companies really struggle to grow
Hmm.
beyond a certain stage. And so at JLabs, we provide them space, which is obviously important. They need a space to go. But I think more importantly, they need mentorship guidance. They need market facing advice from a large company. And at JLabs, we're doing that. And so it's that market facing piece, but we're also doing it within the context of an open innovation model. So we don't take any rights in the IP. We don't
Oh
get
wow.
a first right of refusal or take any equity participation in the companies that don't join JLabs. They apply, they join our facility, and we try to give them all the support they need to help get them to that next stage, that Series A financing. So for me, it's the market-facing advice, the open innovation model, and the access to the resources and supports they need to help them accelerate their product or technology.
Yeah, that's a fantastic open innovation mindset right there. And kind of speaking of your personal goal, you said 5 to 10 startups leading to Series A, for example. What currently right now you're the most proud of? When it's a specifically difficult days happens, you look at that and it's like, oh yeah, we did right there.
Yeah, it's funny is when you ask me that question, I kind of think when people ask me, I have to be careful because the companies within JLabs are a little bit like my kids. So when you ask me that question, I can't say that I've got a favorite child. So I can't use names. But I'd say that we've been involved in several of our companies in the last year during COVID-19 of raising money. And we played an active role in that, first of all, by helping them get a chance to do their experiments and advance their technology, but also by
Mhm.
working with them to find investors, by being a source of information to those investors and being a voice to validate this company. So I think we've done a lot, from in access to resources or connections. So we've had a number of companies when our JLabs at Toronto site raise money. We've had some of those companies engage in partnerships with J&J. So for me, it's all of those things make me feel proud that we've done our part as JLabs to help those companies grow and succeed, and that's my pride point. I can't name any names because I don't want to call them out specifically, but and I'll miss some. But I think that being able to help companies raise capital and engage in corporate partnerships, that's what JLabs does, and we've done that this year and in one of the most difficult years. And so that's something to be proud of.
Hey, it is, and I think it tells a lot about the capacity of building an incubator in that environment to kind of get nourished by the success of everybody, right? It's not about just one success. It's about everybody. And if you have a startup, don't forget there's a team of people supporting you, and maybe just take a little time sending them a nice message saying like, hey, you remember when you did this? It helped me to connect to that and that, and that really unravel interesting opportunities, for example. But let's continue. I'm curious, for example, when we looked at JLABS, Toronto was actually the first location outside US. What kind of changed maybe in the industry in the last few years that allowed that kind of location to pop on the map, pop in the
I
map,
think all
let's
the
say?
ingredients were there. So when we think about Toronto, we think about, it's at the heart where our location is presently. It's at the heart of a number of academic institutions, and it's also at the heart of the financial industry in Toronto. And we're at a phase where
Mm-hmm.
there's been enough investment in basic research that we're starting to see that translational impact of that investment start to occur. So I think we're also seeing universities and governments investing in translation. So not just basic research, but translation, and putting specific resources behind that. We're part of that equation. So you need basic research. You need an investment in basic research. We have that in Toronto. You need a capital market that's interested in providing risk capital to those companies. That's happening. And I think you need a translational infrastructure to help with that. So I think in all of those check boxes, if you want to call them that, we've been successful in Toronto in doing that. I'm not to say that other places aren't cracking the nut on it as well, but in Toronto, I think we're a little bit ahead in that regard. And so, that's why, for a number of reasons, JLABS at Toronto made sense, and why we've been successful, quite honestly.
Yeah, and speaking of which, you've been doing that for 5 years now, and I'm curious, what are the things you learned over the last 5 years, and what are the things that you haven't learned yet, and you still have to fine tune a bit, let's say, for the next 5 years?
I think it's focus. So I think we've learned that we can't be all things to all people, and that every ecosystem is good at certain things. So in Toronto, and in Canada generally, we've seen a real strength in artificial intelligence, and that across all domains, but specifically the intersection between artificial intelligence and life sciences. We've seen a tremendous investment and success in translational research in cell therapy and gene therapy. And so we've seen that those are the areas of strength, and that's really where we need to focus our activities. And so I tell anybody, even people starting up a small company, is like, focus on your strengths, because that's where you can really generate the most success. So I think that's where, that's what we've learned. I think what do we need to learn still? I think it's, I talked a little bit about that talent piece and helping some of these companies grow and scale. Are there things beyond mentorship and space that we can provide? Obviously, access to capital, but are there other tools we can bring to the marketplace to help them grow and succeed? I think there are, and so in the next coming years, we want to think about other ways we can show up with these companies in Toronto, but also with virtual models to reach out to companies in Montreal or Vancouver or wherever they are in Canada, to see if there's other things we can do, or other ways we can connect with companies. So that's kind of the next iteration, I think, is, can we move beyond bricks and mortar? Can we bring things other than just space to these companies? And that's probably where that is where we're going to be putting our focus moving forward.
So I think I have a nice follow-up question related to that, which is, companies who are still forming, they're still redefining, they pivot every once in a while. And of course, you have, for example, Johnson & Johnson that has a bigger structure, and they also get constantly in touch with different organizations. But you're uniquely kind of well-positioned to kind of show an example in some ways. And where I want to bring you to is, let's talk about, let's say, corporate responsibility. The role of companies everywhere right now, it's been heavily defined and redefined. All the social components, environmental components, all of those things are slowly gaining traction within the more traditional sector. We also see that on the other side, even nonprofits right now, they're questioning their own role, saying like, we cannot just advocate for one specific type of mission. We have to be more financially viable, and etc. So everything here is changing. How is an incubator like JLAB kind of positioned to maybe step up the game in terms of corporate responsibility? Is there already some initiatives in the work there?
There are. So, I mean, we've always put a focus on STEM as well as diversity in both the companies we source, the programming we put on. We are probably 30% of our companies are minority led. So or have female founders. So we've done well. I struggle sometimes to say that because that makes you think that the work is over, and it's not. I think the events over the last year have made us all realize that systemic racism and barriers to people who are underrepresented exist in every structure. And I think we always have to be active and vigilant to make sure that we're doing what we can to eliminate those barriers. I think we've done some good things. We started a Women in STEM program at JLABS, where some of the female entrepreneurs who are within the companies to get together, and we facilitated that, and now it's grown into its own organization. We as J&J Innovation ran what we call a quickfire challenge, basically a call for innovators in the Black community in the US to come forward with innovations in the consumer space. So, there's numerous things we can try. So we've done a lot of things in the past, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to continue to keep that momentum going and add to it, because I think people have been left behind. There have been inequities, and we need to continue to address them and again, find the systemic barriers that may be preventing people from fully participating in broader societal structures.
Yeah, it seems like the right attitude. Say, this is what we've done, but it's not over yet, and we find solutions step by steps. It's an ever evolving world, and you need everybody's help in that process. Actually, speaking about collaboration, JLab seems to be able to create you talk about collaboration all the time, and we're looking at some initiatives like the Blue Night program and also BARDA. Can you tell us a bit more what those programs are?
I think Blue Night is a perfect example of how we like to show up in different things we like to do to make the value proposition come real. So Blue Night is a collaboration we have with BARDA, which is the U.S. department, comes out of the U.S. Health and Human Services Department, and they're responsible for developing strategies, treatments for threats, biological threats, such as the pandemic. And in this instance, I think they're looking for solutions related to COVID-19, but the next pandemic that's going to happen. And so that group was interested in partnering with JLABS to find companies that could participate or could help come up with solutions that against these biological threats. So, we have a program where we're looking for companies who can come join JLABS. If they come and join JLABS, their rent is funded by or underfunded by BARDA. BARDA will give them some specific resources to help them with the commercialization of their technology as it applies to these biological threats. And it's a perfect example of us bringing an organization that can help you accelerate your program, who can bring you advice and mentorship, even beyond what we can do. And so that partnership really has helped companies accelerate another part of their technology, give them another shot on goal, and also do it in a very important area of health, and that's been driven home by the events of the last year.
Yeah, because this is a very almost strange problem to have, to prepare yourself for the next pandemic. I don't think we need to explain why to anyone, but in practice, what are the kind of discussions that you have around the table to mobilize that energy for a problem that we don't have yet?
I think good. I don't have to mobilize. I think many of the small companies, they're by their very nature, they're looking at stuff that's 5 to 6 years away. So when we talk to companies today about COVID-19, obviously they're saying, hey, listen, I can be available to help with COVID-19, but they're aware that their technology is probably going to be more applicable to the next one. So I think companies bring the energy, and what we're trying to do with Blue Night is harness that energy and try to provide a meaningful opportunity for them to commercialize. So I think the energy comes from the companies, and it's our job to facilitate that energy.
So just create those natural connections, let's say. And I looked, and JLabs actually partnered with Mars and CIFAR. Can you tell us a bit more about why you decided to go with those organizations in Toronto?
We're in every ecosystem where JLabs shows up, we really try to say, who are the people who are driving innovation? Who are the people who have the great connections? Who can we come in and hit the ground running and catalyze growth? And so, those organizations were the ones we initially partnered with. I have to be careful because, they're not the only organizations there, but they're the ones where we felt at the time were the best ones to partner with. And we continue to evolve our partnership model wherever we are. So, Blue Knight is an example of that, where we partner with BARDA as JLABS as a global organization. But I've got numerous partners, both in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, who we partner with on programming. We partner with to find companies. So, I think one of the things is, if you're an organization out there and you have companies which are incubating and you want to meet or talk with JLABS, reach out to us. We're always happy to partner and meet new companies and engage with new technologies as well.
Yeah, this is a fantastic way of approaching that, because we see that sometimes with companies, they want to get involved in the innovation, but they do it maybe in a disruptive way that ultimately doesn't necessarily work. They don't exactly look at the landscape. They have plenty of good intentions. They come somewhere, but there are already some structure. So it's fantastic to see that you're very tuned on what already exists out there, and then highlight those connections. Okay, so hey, time is running quickly. I have my producer just saying, okay, next section. Hey, so stay on the line. I'm getting a word basically from the producer. We have to go to the next section, but I have to reveal first the secret word that we talked about in the giveaway. So we'll bring stay on the line, and we'll bring Farah in just a moment. So, hey, do you want to win 1 or 2 tickets for Effervescence? The secret word is femtech. So make sure to write it down. To enter the draw, all you have to do are those 3 simple steps. Well, like this post. Yeah, that's an easy one, right? To follow Montreal New Tech on Facebook or Instagram. There's some nice people working to create and post content. A quick photo will mean the world to them, I'm sure. And write our secret word, I'm going to say it a second time, femtech, in the comments below this post. And you know what? I have an idea. Tag a friend that you think will be interested in participating. There's a lot of very interesting discussions that happens in that show. Maybe bring someone who's interested in those topics, and promote the word. We would love that. Hey, please help me welcome Farah from Montreal in Vivo. Huge thanks to you, Farah, from Montreal in Vivo again, for donating those tickets. How are you doing, by the way?
I'm good. I'm, as you can imagine, the excitement, but also the pressure ramping up as we get super close to the date. But I'm really, really excited about everything that's coming up. We actually just a few minutes ago got up to the 500 registrations bar. So we're super, super excited about that. So all the people.
So that's why
I'm sorry?
That's your curve of energy, and how many people subscribe and how much you have energy before the after event kind of slow down. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about the event, actually. Why would people want to go and subscribe and not miss it?
Yeah, so I mean, the event, I think, has something for everyone. It's kind of a pick and choose format. So really, whether you want to go to the job fair, there's, I think, over 100 jobs that have been posted. And also, if you're looking to hire, if you're a startup that's looking to hire something like 80 or so, and I think it's going up, applicants. There is going to be B2B networking sessions, so with brain dates between the participants. Again, 500 participants, there's a lot to choose from in terms of who you can get to meet in those B2B sessions. And workshops as well. So, how to, for example, perfect your pitch, or how to work in a more ecological way, environmentally friendly way. So yeah, really something for everything. Of course, I have a big bias for the startup pitch contest because I'm organizing it, but I really
all love startup pitch.
Yeah. We're going to have 10 startups pitching, a really amazing panel of judges. There's, of course, going to be the creative collisions, and this is something that maybe we're going to want to talk about with Allan, because I'm going to be moderating one of the rooms in which Allan is going to so generously be participating.
By the way, let me give you an example of when Farah talked about those interactions. Imagine you join an event like Effervescence and you hear a great speaker. When you go to those networking rooms and all of those sessions, you get to ask a question directly to those. So, for example, Farah, I'm pretty sure you have a question for Allan right now.
Well, I think that the question I would ask Allan is, I want to make the link with the session that we're going to be discussing together on quantum computing, because, I think it's something that sort of still sounds out of the left field, like, okay, quantum computing, what does it have to do with drug development or drug discovery? But I'd love to hear Allan about that.
Yeah. So thanks for that. I think quantum computing, AI, it's in the early days, I think, in the drug discovery side, to try to understand. So I think we as industry are still trying to think as what are the use cases and what can this do to help us increase our throughput of identifying medications. So I think there are days are early. So for companies that are in those spaces, we're eager to engage with them, because what does that mean? I think we're at a stage where we could co-create something. And so I think companies that are in that space, I think specifically as it pertains to proteins and protein-protein interactions, that's really where we've seen the promise to date, but nobody's really cracked the nut on it yet in a meaningful way. So I think when it comes to quantum computing, I think we don't know what we don't know, but I think that's a great place for us to be, because if you're a small company in that space, we'd love to connect with you, because again, it's a chance to co-create something.
Yeah, if we're talking about a disruptive type of idea, or technology, we're trying to crack code with quantum science, whatever it's biological code or just cryptographic kind of traditional code. I'm curious. I might actually jump in that session to just get a bit of insights. Hey, time is running fast. Farah, thank you for your time. We'll see you the day of the event. Just a bit more energy left, and then you can take it easy. Thanks, Farah.
Thank you so
Allan,
much.
yes. And Allan, while we've been talking, actually, we got a few questions from the audience. So let's take the next few minutes to answer some of those.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So it's time for the audience questions. We love those. This is honestly such a part of why we like doing live. By the way, the time is now. So if you haven't posted any questions in the comment and something is kind of troubling you, hey, just a quick question. It takes a second. So the first question we have is actually from Alejandro, our director of programming. I know you wanted to ask this one. Go ahead, Alejandro.
Hi, Allan. Hi, Valentine. Well, I know that I have had some conversations with Allan, but I didn't ask this. Just for the audience to know, Allan will be participating in the Creative Collisions Conference on Montreal New Tech in March 17. And this conference aims to foster the collaboration between the startups, researchers, and industry. So the question for Johnson & Johnson is, how would Johnson & Johnson measure the success of its participation during Creative Collisions with the startups and the researchers that day?
You know what, I think for us, measuring success and innovation, I think is a challenge for all of us. But I think for us is every time we meet a new company, every time we meet somebody or engage with somebody who's got a breakthrough approach to impacting human health, that's a victory. So I think for those of you who are listening today who haven't signed up yet for the event or want to come, please sign up. It's a great opportunity for us to meet these companies. So, just partnering with yourselves on this program, that's the win. Meeting these companies is a win, because innovations are in our DNA. It's what we do. So we want to meet innovators who are going to bring these new solutions. And this is another opportunity to meet those innovators.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Allan. Do we have some other questions, Dennis? Dennis is our producer. He's working in the backstage. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, guys.
He hates when I bring him on board.
Yeah. Great to see you guys. Thank you so much for joining today. Yeah, so I had a really great conversation with a new contact of mine. As you know, we were putting the word out there that, Allan, you're going to be on our show today. And I had a quick question from one of my contacts. So Lee Brighton from Vancouver sent this my way, and I know we wanted to jump into this discussion a little bit more as well earlier on, but time goes very quickly. So here's her question. She wanted to know a little bit more about the funding and inequity between female and male-led startups. So I know you guys mentioned that you have a lot of female-led startups, and we're curious to dive a little bit more into the discussion about, some of the other things that perhaps are they measured, are they not measured? in terms of, do you see any inequity between funding between female-led startups and male-led startups? And just a general conversation around the total funding support for female-led entrepreneurs compared to males. What can you tell us about that from your experience working at JLABS?
So what I'd say is, I probably see the functional output of that as I deal with, there's percentage-wise, there's less female-led companies, and I think that's because there is an absence of risk capital for female entrepreneurs. I think we're doing what we can. And as I said, the events of the last 12 months, I think we have to look more broadly. So I think the inequities we see in funding are probably a reflection of broader inequities in society. So let me say that. And so I think even when you look at the investor and the investor base or the VC crowd, it's been my observation that women are underrepresented there. So that probably reflects why female entrepreneurs don't have as great an opportunity to secure investment as male entrepreneurs do. So I think we need to look at some of these structures. We need to do what we can to promote female entrepreneurs and give them a platform upon which they can be successful. Success breeds success, and so we'll do that piece. But I also think just beyond JLABS and societally, we have to look at some of the broader institutions and make sure that female representation and representation of diverse communities is addressed. And I think that will go a long way to alleviating some of the gaps we see in financing and female-led companies.
Fantastic. Yeah, in many ways, the key here is at some point, it's not that easy, is to start to measure it. And it's very tricky when the ratios are different, the type of projects are very different, but at least start to measure somewhere and go from there. Dennis, do we have other questions? Can you put them on screen? Fantastic. We have Assad who asked, I heard you speak about the potential of Toronto as the next biotech industry hub. What's something you see coming in near future that excites you there?
I think Canada really, I think that COVID-19 is going to create an opportunity. So I think that's going to create an opportunity for companies in the cell and gene therapy space. So I think that's an opportunity, and I think with some of the government money that's going to flow out of COVID-19, I'm hoping that it's more long-lived than just to address COVID-19, but will help rekindle or reaffirm the biotech industry. So I'm hoping that'll be the case, and there are some early indications that will be. What I'd like to see is that the government engage not in government-funded projects, but in true public-private partnerships to help small companies develop. So I think that excites me. And I think the other thing that excites me, quite honestly, is I think Canadians are uniquely positioned to be innovators in this space. The diversity of our communities, the way we approach problems, I think that gives us a leg up on many other jurisdictions. And so I think there's a lot of things to be positive about. But I think opportunities are created by turmoil, and I think certainly, and I started the conversation this way, is I think COVID-19 has demonstrated that we need to have a vibrant biotech community, and I hope that government's going to be part of that, investment's part of that. The investment community has seen biotech companies perform better during COVID-19 than any other sector. So I think if you're an investor out there, biotech is a good place to be. Is the investment cycle longer? Yes. But the returns have been through the roof through the last year. So I think that's a good validation as well. And that's reason to be excited.
Yeah, it's a very good case for it, of course. And I think we have time for one last question. Elias. So he asked, well, it's a difficult question. I was worried, like, what would Elias ask? So, so the question is about measuring success at such an early stage, which is definitely a problem for startups. Would you definitely love to know, Elias would like to know on the side metrics, what can help in a journey towards success? Meaning, what are the other metrics that we can think to measure the relationship, for example, between corporations and the innovation community? So what are the little metrics that we should keep an eye on there?
I think there's, I'm not sure I completely understood the question, but I think in terms of metrics that we hold ourselves to, it's, investments. So I think investments part of it, and investments in partnerships with small companies, and certainly at JLABS we've invested significantly in small companies. As in J&J, we've invested in companies across Canada. I think jobs are another one. So from an economic footprint perspective, are we employing people? I think when you look at our JLABS facility in Toronto, we employ close to 300 people in the facility. If you look at companies that are within our facility, and through contractors, about 500 in total. So I think jobs are one, investment is another. I think the development of products is an important one. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we'd like to see Canadian companies developing products. I think at the end of the day, life science and the promise in the stock market is great, but if we don't bring products to the hands of patients and make a meaningful impact on human health, then really what's it all for? So I think that's the other part. I'd like to see Canadian biotech companies, Canadian medtech companies start to get their products out on the market, and that's another metric of success.
Yeah, that gives a nice overview, right? Things are not simple. It cannot just be one metrics of like total sales, for example. Hey, you know what? Next up, what I propose is let's get a different perspective. We have Brent Stead. He's the co-founder of Specific Biologics. Hey, hi, Brent. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks. Well, at Innovators, we believe that to get the full picture, you have to engage different experts from different perspectives. This is why we fire away all those questions. And today, we invited you, Brent Stead. You're the co-founder of Specific Biologics. So you're on a mission to develop a novel gene editing technology that will treat diseases at the genetic level. In fact, Brent and Allan, you guys go way back. We thought it would get the two of you together in the same room, virtual room, so to talk, and kind of ask you what you've been both working on. So let me start here with you, Brent.
Yep.
How was your time working with Allan?
No pressure, Brent.
Yeah. Be honest. It's a safe space here. Go ahead.
No, it's fantastic. So, Allan and I've known him pre-JLABS day as well. So through mutual connections in industry as well. But what I would say about Allan is he's very generous and genuine with his help for startup companies here at JLABS, and is really invested in seeing them succeed. So he just really offers his committed support to the success of the whole ecosystem here, and really appreciate that.
Yeah, the way Allan was talking about the whole ecosystem and what he kind of values, I have no hard time believing that. And on your end, Allan, I was curious, what was the first impression that you had of Brent when first time you met?
What's the impression I have of all innovators? I think it's incredibly brave for people to start a company. And so, you asked me before whether I'm an innovator. I do innovative things, but I'm not an innovator. So I think about somebody like Brent starting a company, he and another investigator working in a lab together. That takes a lot of belief, a lot of commitment. And so, with Brent and with all the companies, I have a tremendous amount of admiration for the courage they have, and that kind of drives you to support them and do what you can to make sure that you can do what you do to help them grow their business.
Speaking of which, by the way, Brent, what kind of help did you have through your journey, through your personal journey, through your startup journey that was related to JLABS?
Yeah, a great question. So Allan kind of mentioned about kind of the hard assets, like there's great resources in terms of, being equipment and being capital efficient to be able to use all that equipment there at JLABS. But I would actually say the more important thing are some of those intangibles. So, there's investor networks, there is support for waste management for a lab, which isn't easy stuff to put together. So there's all those ancillary benefits that come from operating in a well-oiled machine like JLABS at Toronto that are incredibly valuable outside of the actual physical assets there.
That's fantastic. And kind of reflecting, I was curious, Allan, was Brent's journey kind of a typical one for a startup, or it was a bit a unique case?
Well, I think you can probably ask him. He's probably still on that journey. So I think everyone's journey is unique. It's unique to them. And so on the outside, I think we can draw lines and talk about valuations and timing, but I think it's very unique to them.
But what's the common tracks that startups have?
I think the commonality is really that, getting proof of concept, understanding whether what they have is relevant, where that relevance fits versus other competitive companies. And so that's where I like to play a role. JLABS likes to play a role, trying to give them that market-facing advice. So I think there are certain commonalities in that the journey of companies. But again, as I said, the entrepreneur themselves, they're on their own personal journey.
Yeah, so you have to be tuned to that. You know what I realized, Brent? We haven't talked about your startup, right? We've been talking about you, and let's face it. Sometimes when you have a startup, you're so focused about startup, we don't take that much time to talk about our own journey. But let's go back to startup. You know what? The best way to do it is, the drill. We're a startup ecosystem. Can you pitch your startup, let's say in 60 seconds? And Allan, can you kind of pay attention to how he says that versus the first time he kind of pitched the idea? I'm curious to see what changed. Go ahead, Brent.
On the hot seat. Which is great. So I specifically, our team is developing next generation gene editing technologies. So when you're thinking of next generation, there's really two things that these technologies have to solve. They have to get to the right place, and they have to do the right thing when they get there. So when you're gene editing means that you have to deliver it to the target tissue in order to actually edit the genes in the target cell. And for a gene editor, it has to make sure it makes the right modification to that gene in order to have a benefit. And so we are trying to tackle those two problems with our next generation technologies and developing those as potential therapeutics.
Okay, that's good. Now, Allan, how was that pitch different from the first time?
When I've first known Brent, he would have done that in probably 10 seconds. So actually, Brent is he's one of those people. He's probably he's very humble, and so he probably there's a lot more to his company than when he first came, and so he's been able to. His company's story has evolved, and he's evolved at telling it. So I think it's a lot more. It's cogent and to the point, but I think it's probably longer than he would have given 2 years ago.
Yeah, Brent, I'll give some leeway to Brent. He's trying to accommodate various understanding of the biotech ecosystem. So look, we spoke with Allan about initiatives like Blue Nights, which was very interesting. Brent, your startup is doing some very innovative things that are contributing to this effort. What I want to know is, well, of course, what role does your startup play in the Blue Night initiatives, and let's start there.
Yeah, so we've been developing some gene editing technologies for diseases like cystic fibrosis. So one of our focus has been on lung diseases. So when the pandemic struck, we thought, okay, we have a set of technologies that are useful for those types of diseases. How can we apply them to be able to try to tackle the problem that COVID has presented? And COVID is, the virus relies on DNA or an RNA to make more copies of itself. So we thought, can we deliver gene editors to the lung to eliminate the virus? And so we had a set of technologies to do that. We started to apply them in order to see whether or not that we could generate proof of concept for being able to do that.
It makes sense. And if we kind of scale it up a bit in the future, how do you think your technology / innovation, of course, they're related, will impact the future of biological threats in general?
Yeah, when I think about it in terms of biological threat from a pandemic, where our focus has been is what Allan said earlier about what happens next and being ready for that next one to rapidly deploy a solution. And what that really requires is an off-the-shelf solution. So we're envisioning our system really is an off-the-shelf where you know the DNA sequence or RNA sequence of a virus. You can quickly reprogram these technologies to be able to target those. So pull it off the shelf, get the therapeutic to the patient when the virus emerges, and then you're ready to combat it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense with the editing part, right? You might not know what exact shape it will take, but if you can quickly, with minimal modification, get it rolling, you know, that's the name of the game. And were you a part of the Blue Knight program with JLAB? How was your experience there, and even with BARDA actually?
Yeah, we were one of the first 7 companies that
Oh.
launched in the Blue Knight initiative to apply our technologies to that. Our experience with BARDA has been fantastic. So they offer mentorship. That's part of the program where you actually connect with folks at BARDA who know how to move these products to the clinic. So we've been on the benefiting end of that to be able to understand our journey to moving our product toward clinic.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'm curious, let's talk about the other applications. So of course, specific biologics has a lot of potential, I think, but your core proposition here. And can you tell me a bit what are the other instances or applications that gene editing might have outside, let's say, that specific threat that we're talking about?
Yeah, I already mentioned cystic fibrosis, one of the programs we're working on. But if you look at the reports, there's about up to 10,000 diseases where there's a single known genetic cause for that disease.
Oh, wow.
So having tools or products that might be able to help in those diseases. But outside of that, many diseases are caused by a genetic change. So if we can tackle those types of genetic changes at their source, a change in the coding sequence, we have the potential to probably treat or hopefully cure some of these conditions.
Yeah, and I'm curious, it probably relates to what Allan was talking about. How did your objective, it's a startup, right? How did your objective change since you started working on it? There's some pivots that happen, you know the drill.
Oh yeah, it's the journey's like this, right? So yeah, it was, we had a black swan event. We had a pandemic kind of in the middle of our journey. And so I think we think about what do we do with the situation that we have, and think about how can we apply things that we're working on to try to tackle some of the problem that we're facing right now as well. And that also helps in the other programs. So we will be able to apply our learnings from our pandemic response project in our other programs like in cystic fibrosis. So it's yeah, you kind of have to just roll with the punches in the startup and make the best of the situation.
Yeah, well, all things considered, you're better being in biotech when this happens than some other startups. I'm curious, Allan, you refer to that. Are you surprised by where Brent is now, with all those variation and changes, or that's kind of what you expected?
I don't think we go into these things with any expectations. I don't think any, even people starting a company can ask Brent this question, have expectations. I think we work diligently every day with all of our startups to help them achieve their goals. Sometimes the technology fails. Sometimes financing doesn't happen. But is Brent where I thought he would be? I think he's approached it the right way. So I'd say his approach has been a good one, and I think that hasn't changed. So from the first time I met him, I liked his approach, and I liked his honest and forthright manner, and the capitally efficient manner in which he was attacking the problem. And so I think that approach is a good one. And the technology is going to go where the technology goes. Financing is going to happen or not happen, and hopefully will happen, Brent. But I think the approach, and so we're trying to help companies with their approach. How do you approach that? How do you do this in a structured way? And so I think that's really where Brent's put his focus and where we like to put our focus.
I like that. It's yes, you have tools, but the attitude. Ultimately, you don't know what's going to happen, but the attitude is how you're going to use all those tools. So I actually want to ask one last question. I'll ask to both of you. Allan, you might go first on this one. Related to, honestly, everything we talked about, what does innovation means to you, Allan?
Yeah, I think what it means to me is really, that we had a scientist at our company, Paul Jansen, and it was his motto was really the patient is waiting. And that motto is something that motivated everybody at the company, and still motivates everybody at the company. The patient's waiting. And so for all companies, even myself, like we have to dedicate every day our activities to make sure we help these companies grow and scale so that they can get their products to market, because the patient's waiting. And that patient could be you, it could be my mom, it could be my kids. And so it's incumbent on all of us to do what we can to help these companies get their products to market.
Oh, that's chilling and gives a fantastic sense of purpose. Thanks for sharing. And Brent, what's your take on what innovation means for you right now?
It's very similar to that. We have great technologies. Let's get these technologies out there to the benefit of society. And so innovation is what really bridges that gap. Get it off the bench, get it into practical applications, and then we actually are innovating.
Oh, look, fantastic. Thank you, Brent and Allan, for all those insights. You know what? Next, we have a fun segment we like to call Innovator Nominations. So most innovators know other innovators, right? That they kind of hunt together. That's how they survive. Whatever their mentors, someone they look up to, or even honestly rivals. So every show we like to take a bit of time to ask our guests who kind of motivates you, who you look up to. Brent, let's start with you. Who's the most innovative person or organization that you know and that maybe you'd like to nominate and hear from, for example, in this episode?
Yeah, I kind of go back to where gene editing really started, or the current version of it. And I would say I always keep an eye on for what Jennifer Doudna does at UC Berkeley. She's obviously a Nobel laureate, incredibly talented, really launched the field of CRISPR. So I'm inspired by her work and follow it very closely. And anything she does is usually gold. So
yeah, well, CRISPR is a fantastic example. And okay, so imagine we have her on the show, and you can ask any question, and they have to answer. This is just what tricky question would you ask?
I'd be curious what the eureka moment was when she was doing her research and thought, hey, wow, this could be revolutionary. I'd love to hear what that was, or if that was there, or if it was a slow burn. So
yeah, just that specific process when you realize, wait, that might be way bigger. Oh, fantastic. And what about you, Allan? Who would you identify as an innovator on your end?
I talked a little bit about Paul Jansen at our company, but personally, I'm going to go off the board here, Valentin, and Michael Faraday. So one of the greatest chemists or physicists, in antiquity. And why Faraday? Well, Faraday he wasn't classically scientifically trained. He trained himself and became a scientist by learning from others. And so I think that's a great model for anybody. And the other thing about Faraday is he remained incredibly humble throughout his life, in spite of all the things that he gave to the world. And even when he was presented with the opportunity for a knighthead, he turned it down because he didn't feel that was something that he wanted. It would take away from his ability to interact with his scientists and be accepted that way. So I thought Faraday was somebody personally I always thought of as a great innovator. And if I had to ask him a question, I would probably ask how amazed would he be to realize the fruits of his labor, and that some of today's very technology, the electric car, can owe its start back to his basics on the electromechanics. And so that's for me, Faraday is always somebody I keep in mind. First of all, being intellectually curious, and second of all, be humble.
I think it's a fantastically motive here I see through this current show, where, remember, we started even location-based, and it's not about where you are, it's about what is the environment can provide you. And it's definitely still true with the logic of incubators. What's the attitude you can bring, what this environment can give you. And we are lucky enough to have a few innovators that we talked about a journey. Some of them are not from a science background, and some are from a science background, but definitely not from an entrepreneurship background. And that kind of learning and never stop learning, it's a fantastic idea if we can motivate our viewers to just seek slightly outside their horizon of what they know and go out there, yes, maybe you don't know where you're gonna go with that. Maybe you don't know how it all gonna unravel, but it's a fantastic journey. Anyway, I'm going out on a tangent here. Before we wrap up, I would like to take a moment to give you a chance to tell us how to follow your work. So let's say, Brent, if we want to know more about gene editing, what do you have in mind for us?
Yeah, I would say two things. So if you want to learn more about gene editing in general, check out genome.gov. They've got some great resources. And then if you want to learn more about what we're doing, our website, specificbiologics.com, to learn a little bit more about the tech and connect with us as well.
Fantastic. And Allan?
If you want to learn more about us, JLABS, if you Google JLABS, I should probably have the website, but you can go check out our website. Look at all our locations. If you're a company and you have a technology and you want to see if it's a fit with JLABS, reach out to us, apply. You can apply online. Even if you're an investigator and you think you may have an idea, you can reach out to us through our website. We're happy to connect with you. I think the message I'd give people is, if you think you've got something, you probably, reach out to us. We're always happy to connect.
Yeah, take the first step, right? Brent, you never know where it leads you, right? Just the one step you took a long time ago. So, it's been a pleasure to have you, Brent and Allan, on the show. First, thank you for taking the time, and thank you for all the work you're pulling out there. It's a very specific, it's a very weird time, but at the same time, I think we're in good company when people are all contributing to that effort. So thank you again. And, again, if people want to ask a little comment, you can use the comment section and maybe we can answer some of those. So thank you, Brent and Allan.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. Hey, you're still here? Don't go. Here's one last piece of news we have for you, the viewer. I take as a bet, if you've been watching the whole show and you're still here now, you probably want to know where you can get your biotech fix. There's a good news for you. There's an event that's organized by Montreal New Tech. It's on March 17th. It's the Creative Collision event. So the topic this time, because it's a recurring event, it's tech and collaborations, and that will shape the future of life science. So a lot of that has been discussed today, but there's more. There's amazing panels. There's reverse pitches. I love reverse pitches. It's a fantastic way of getting all those brains working. And the best thing about this is it's all for free. You have amazing guests coming up, giving their time, and some fantastic discussions in all of this for free. So, of course, look at the link in the comments. And one last thing, did you enjoy the show? If yes, share this episode with scientists, biotech enthusiasts, people maybe that you would like to help them do the first step. Tag them in the comment section. So thank you for tuning in to Innovators, powered by Montreal New Tech. I hope you enjoyed the show. I loved it. It was a fantastic discussion, and most importantly, thank you, the viewer, for being part of this episode. I'll have to go before the lights attack me, but it's Friday. Have a great time, everyone. Ciao, ciao.